This is Miroku. With her deep black hair and pale skin, anyone might mistake her for a beautiful woman at first glance until they notice the long, terrifying cut across her mouth that stretches all the way to her ears. She is known as the Slit-Mouth woman, and she isn't fully human. As an urban legend, she survives by feeding on people's fear and the rumors people spread about her. Looking at how scary she is, you'd expect everyone to run away in panic the moment they see her. But there is one person who doesn't: Sano Koichi, a 17-year-old boy who is destined to become her husband. Miroku keeps trying to scare him, just like she does this morning. She shows up in her most horrifying form, her mouth wide open, but Koichi simply closes his book and gives her a score of 2 out of 10. Feeling defeated, Miroku slumps down, and Koichi casually tells her she should change her approach. He explains that people won't get scared if she keeps doing the same thing again and again, so she needs to add some variety to better please her customers, by which he means her victims. Miroku quickly reminds him that he is not one of her customers, but her fiancé. So how did a normal high school boy end up engaged to a legendary creature? In this world, certain families are responsible for keeping urban legends alive. The Sano family is one of them, and they follow a tradition where the head of the family must marry these mythical beings. Miroku doesn't actually want to marry Koichi, but she doesn't have much of a choice. In the past, she was incredibly famous, a powerful legend feared by everyone. Back then, she didn't need anyone's help to survive, as her own abilities were enough to spread her name and keep her existence strong. But now, people have stopped believing in the slit-mouthed woman. And if those rumors continue to fade away, Miroku herself will disappear. That's why she has been forced into a contract with the Sano family. There's one important condition in their contract: if Miroku fails to scare Koichi, even once before he turns 18, then she has no choice but to marry him. Until that day comes, they are forced to live together like a couple, while Miroku keeps trying everything she can to escape this fate. When Koichi asks why she's so strongly against the marriage, Miroku reveals she has plenty of reasons. First of all, she has no interest in marrying a high school boy and would much rather regain her lost power on her own. On top of that, she truly believes that a relationship between a human and an urban legend can only end badly. She also assumes Koichi was pushed into this agreement, but the way he treats her so kindly makes her doubt that. And when he openly says that he actually hopes the marriage goes through, it becomes obvious he means it. Honestly, it's hard to understand what's going on in this guy's head. He's fallen for someone straight out of a horror story, and he doesn't even try to hide it. He even says that people should have the right to be with the one they love. Miroku brushes it off at first, thinking he must be joking, but Koichi is completely serious. He decides that before his 18th birthday, he will do everything he can to win her heart and make her fall for him. It's a wild situation, but considering Koichi can already make Miroku nervous just by being close to her, it feels like he might already have the upper hand. Still, the real question is who will mess up first. Will Miroku fail to scare him, or will Koichi fail to win her love? The very next day, Miroku goes out looking for the perfect place to set up her next scare. She eventually finds an old shed that has just the right creepy atmosphere, thinking this could finally be the moment she succeeds. But while she's busy planning her ambush, Koichi sneaks up behind her wearing a demon mask and scares her so badly that her jaw literally drops out of place. Koichi reveals that he overheard her entire plan and calmly tells her she's failed once again, even pointing out the other masks hanging around the shed as proof. He explains that this place is actually where he keeps his collection of antiques and art pieces, then casually jokes that maybe this hobby is why something like her jaw falling off doesn't scare him at all. Miroku quickly denies being frightened, insisting that her jaw dropping was just a coincidence. Still, she can't understand how he managed to stay so calm when anyone else would have run away in terror. Then Koichi softly tells her that he loves her no matter what she looks like, leaving Miroku completely stunned and unable to respond. Once she snaps out of it, Miroku starts going off on him, trying to regain her composure, but in the middle of her rant, she realizes she's almost out of thread. She uses this thread to stitch her mouth shut so she can walk around in public without drawing attention, making it something she absolutely needs. When Koichi asks about it, Miroku admits that she actually prefers having her slit mouth the way it is. However, because of all the trouble it causes, she feels forced to keep it sewn shut, even if it's annoying to deal with. Growing irritated by all his questions, she snaps at him and asks if he has a problem with her. But Koichi doesn't back down. Instead, he calmly tells her that whether her mouth is torn open or stitched closed, he still thinks she's beautiful. That instantly makes her blush again, another win for Koichi. It's clear this high schooler knows exactly what he's doing. Still, Koichi can't help but worry. She's literally stitching her own skin, shouldn't that hurt? Miroku insists that she doesn't feel any pain. Curious, Koichi asks if he can touch it, and she agrees, thinking her body is so different from a human's that she won't feel anything at all. Or at least, that's what she believes. But the moment Koichi gently places his hand on her cheek and brushes his finger against her lips, her reaction says otherwise. Her eyes widen in shock, and her face turns red all over again. And just like that, another point for Koichi. This guy is seriously on a winning streak. After finally calming down from the embarrassment, Miroku angrily calls Koichi a pervert, convinced that he tried to kiss her. Koichi, not wanting to upset her further, quickly apologizes and explains that it was only his finger that touched her lips. Realizing she overreacted, Miroku quietly drops to the floor, too embarrassed to even say goodbye as he leaves. That shed really did have the perfect atmosphere, but not in the way she had planned. Koichi's touch clearly left a strong impression on her. That night, as she sleeps, Miroku ends up dreaming about that exact moment. But just as things begin to feel a little too intense, she suddenly wakes up. Lying there, she feels confused and frustrated, unable to understand why Koichi is affecting her so deeply. Why does he say such bold, almost teasing things not just in real life, but even in her dreams? From what she remembers, humans, especially back when she was at the peak of her legend, were always terrified of beings like her. But when she first met Koichi, he didn't run or scream, he simply smiled. Lost in her thoughts, Miroku walks without paying attention to where she's going and suddenly bumps into a small old woman who appears out of nowhere, scaring her badly. For someone known as a terrifying monster, Miroku seems to get scared more often than she actually scares others. The old woman turns out to be Seiya, their housemaid, who politely introduces herself and mentions that Koichi has already gone out. This surprises Miroku, since Koichi rarely leaves the house, especially this early in the morning. Instead of questioning it, Miroku sees this as the perfect chance to catch him off guard while he's alone. Excited by the idea, she quickly follows after him and soon spots him not too far from the house. Staying hidden, she peeks from around a corner, giving herself a clear view just as Koichi bumps into a strange man with blonde hair and sunglasses. Miroku immediately grows uneasy, wondering if he's run into some kind of thug. Her mind starts racing with wild thoughts, imagining that the guy might be trying to scam Koichi or force him into giving away money. The strange man refuses to let go of Koichi, and Miroku overhears Koichi firmly turning him down, saying he has no interest in going to some terrifying place, whatever that means. Hearing this, Miroku's worry quickly turns into panic. To her, it sounds like Koichi is being kidnapped. Without wasting a second, she decides to step in and save him. Pulling out part of the stitches from her mouth, she calls out to the blonde man. Then, in her signature creepy tone, she asks, "Am I beautiful?" The effect is instant. The man starts trembling and runs away screaming like a child. Koichi, on the other hand, reacts like always completely calm, not even a little surprised to see her. While Miroku is glad she managed to help him, she's even more excited that she finally succeeded in scaring someone, especially after failing so many times with Koichi. Once the stranger is gone, she turns to him and starts questioning how he even got mixed up with someone like that, quickly assuming Koichi must have said something to get himself into trouble. But Koichi stays quiet, and Miroku, unable to handle the silence, starts talking non-stop. She asks if he's finally impressed after seeing what she can really do when she puts in effort, as if she hadn't been trying this whole time back at home. Meanwhile, Koichi drifts off into his thoughts, remembering his childhood. Back then, he used to get bullied at school by kids who envied his family's wealth. One day, he was cornered by two boys who wouldn't leave him alone. And just when things were about to get worse, Miroku appeared and scared them away with her terrifying slit-mouthed look. She probably didn't even realize who he was back then, but Koichi never forgot her face. Seeing her step in to save him again now brings back that same memory. While Koichi is lost in this emotional flashback, Miroku tries to snap him out of it by shaking him and calling for his attention. When he finally responds, he simply says that he was thinking about how much he likes her. As expected, that instantly makes Miroku flustered again. Before she can go on another rant, Koichi gently cuts her off and thanks her for saving him, though Miroku has no idea that he's thanking her not just for today, but for what she did for him long ago as well. As they walk back home, Miroku asks Koichi why he went out so early in the morning. In response, he lifts up a small bag, showing a sewing kit along with fresh thread. However, Miroku doesn't realize that he actually bought it for her. Koichi even starts thinking that maybe he should just return it, since he personally prefers her natural smile anyway, if you can even call it a smile. Just before they reach the house, the blonde man shows up again and blocks their path. He boldly declares that Koichi won't be escaping this time, which is kind of ironic considering he was the one who ran away screaming earlier. The man then peeks behind Koichi and spots Miroku hiding there. After the initial shock wears off, his attitude completely changes, and he quickly apologizes for his earlier behavior, now that he knows she's Koichi's fiancé. Miroku is left totally confused. The guy she thought was some kind of criminal suddenly introduces himself as Yuta, revealing that he's actually Koichi's assistant and bodyguard who has been with him since childhood. He even seems to enjoy teasing Koichi a bit, but his playful mood disappears the moment he remembers something important. Koichi is late for school and isn't even wearing his uniform yet. Right, he is still a high school student. Yuta immediately tells him to hurry up, get changed, and head to school. But Koichi bluntly says he doesn't want to go, which explains why he called it a terrifying place earlier. Hearing this, Miroku starts to worry, thinking maybe he's being bullied or doesn't have any friends. But Koichi doesn't see it that way at all. He just thinks school is a waste of time. He complains that he has to be there before 8 o'clock, meaning he has to leave the house by 7 o'clock, spend the whole day there, and won't even get back home until around 5 o'clock. Well, that's pretty normal, honestly. But what really bothers him is that going to school takes away time he could be spending with Miroku. Even so, Yuta refuses to listen, insisting that as long as Koichi is a student, his main focus should be studying. Koichi tries to argue back, so Yuta turns to Miroku and asks her to convince him to go. Unfortunately, Miroku completely misunderstands the situation and comes to her own strange conclusion that all humans must be afraid of time itself, missing the point entirely. Just then, Seiya the maid steps in and firmly reminds Koichi of their agreement. If he wants Miroku to stay and live with them, then he has to keep up with his studies in return. For some reason, that's enough to finally make Koichi give in. Without arguing further, he heads off to change into his school uniform. After he leaves, Yuta quietly tells Miroku that Koichi has always had a complicated relationship with his family. He explains that Koichi used to be very distant, rarely speaking, and never really trying to connect with his parents. But now, seeing how he acts around Miroku, Yuta feels relieved. It's obvious to him just how much Koichi cares about her. He even asks Miroku to look after his boss, calling Koichi a lovable troublemaker. Curious, Miroku asks Yuta why he keeps his hair covering his face and if she can see what he looks like underneath. Yuta quickly refuses, saying he's just very shy and it's too soon for him to show his face to her. That answer sounds a bit suspicious. Miroku seems to think so too, as she reaches out to lift his hair herself, but before she can, Koichi suddenly appears and grabs her hand. He casually jokes that Yuta looks like that because it's just part of his character design. Whether that's true or not, we'll probably find out later. Before heading off, Koichi hands Miroku a spool of thread, admitting that he borrowed it from the sewing club for her. As Yuta rushes him out the door toward school, Miroku stops him for a moment and thanks him, telling him to take care. It might not seem like much, but to Koichi, it means everything. His face lights up with the biggest smile yet. Even so, Miroku hasn't given up on escaping their contract. If anything, she's more determined than ever. She asks Yuta when Koichi is at his weakest, when he lets his guard down since all her previous attempts have failed. Yuta suggests that mornings are when Koichi is most vulnerable. Taking that advice seriously, Miroku sneaks into his room early the next day while he's still asleep. She quietly enters his bathroom area, ready to catch him completely off guard. You can probably guess what happens next. She suddenly slams her hand down on the bed, uses her creepiest voice, and pulls back his blanket as she delivers her signature line. When Koichi wakes up and sees Miroku leaning over him with her wide, creepy eyes, he barely reacts at all. Instead, he calmly grabs her by the shoulder and pulls her closer. Before things can go any further, Miroku quickly jerks away, frustrated and angry after realizing she failed yet again. This time, it's because she forgot to remove the thread from her mouth. Though honestly, even if she had remembered, it probably wouldn't have changed anything. At this point, it feels like nothing can scare Koichi. She might have tried again, but Koichi suddenly pulls her into bed while still half asleep, wrapping his arms around her. Miroku starts struggling and complaining, but Koichi tells her to stay quiet. If she makes too much noise, Yuta and Seiya might walk in and see them like this, which would be very awkward. Clearly, Koichi just wants to stay close to her for as long as he can. When Miroku tells him to let go, he conveniently drifts back to sleep, still holding her tightly. At first, Miroku feels completely uncomfortable being trapped like that. But then she remembers what Yuta said about Koichi, that he didn't have much of a connection with his family and used to be very distant and quiet. Looking at how peaceful he seems while sleeping, she can't bring herself to wake him up. Slowly, she stops resisting, relaxes, and settles into his side. To her surprise, she even starts to feel comfortable in his arms and eventually closes her eyes. Later, when Koichi wakes up, the situation is flipped. Now it's Miroku who is fast asleep beside him. For once, Koichi is the one getting flustered, his heart racing as he looks at her resting so peacefully next to him. After spending more time living together and even sharing a bed, Koichi decides it's time to take things a step further. He wants Miroku to eat a meal with him. Up until now, she has always refused, probably because she isn't human and doesn't actually need food. Still, Koichi knows she can eat, so he asks her what her favorite food is. Later, when Yuta walks into the kitchen, he's greeted by a shocking scene. It looks less like someone cooking and more like the aftermath of a disaster, almost like Koichi is trying to hide a body instead of preparing food. Miroku had said her favorite treat was hard candy, and even though that's not exactly easy to make, Koichi is determined to do it. No matter how chaotic things get or what kind of strange results come out of that pot, he's fully committed to making it for her. Since Yuta is usually the one who handles the cooking, Koichi doesn't have much experience in the kitchen. And knowing he'll be the one stuck cleaning up this mess later, Yuta decides he has no choice but to step in. Koichi has been going at it wildly, even smashing fruit instead of preparing it properly. Trying to guide him, Yuta suggests that strawberries should be sliced neatly instead. But Koichi, acting completely reckless, starts trying to cut the fruit while holding it in his hand. That quickly goes wrong when he ends up slicing his own palm. Yuta panics and rushes to get a bandage, clearly shocked by how careless he's being. While patching him up, Yuta asks what's gotten into him. Why is he going this far? Koichi simply answers that he wants to share a meal with Miroku. Hearing that, Yuta begins to understand. After all, there are many parts of human life that urban legends don't take part in. Even though Miroku looks human and lives with him, it's easy to forget that they're completely different beings. Koichi just wanted to feel closer to her by doing something as simple as cooking. But now, after failing so badly, he feels useless and honestly, a bit foolish too. Yuta reassures him, saying that he just lacks experience and will improve with time. He even admits that he thought Koichi was doing all this as part of some bigger plan to make Miroku fall in love with him so the marriage would go through. I mean, in a way, that's not entirely wrong. But Koichi shakes his head and explains that it's not that complicated. He just wants to do something nice for her. At the end of the day, all he really hopes for is to sit down and share a meal together. Hearing that, Yuta feels genuinely moved. Deciding to help, he steps in and fixes Koichi's disastrous attempt at cooking. With Yuta's guidance, they somehow manage to turn the chaos into a batch of surprisingly good-looking candies. And when Miroku tries them, she absolutely loves them. It's been a long time since she's eaten anything at all, and this is the first time she's tasted something like this. Seeing her enjoy them so much, Koichi asks if he can have one too and reaches for one of her lollipops. But as he does, Miroku notices the bandage on his hand, the result of his earlier mistake. While Koichi happily talks about what he might cook for her next time, Miroku suddenly goes quiet. The candy clearly worked, because she now cares enough to worry about him getting hurt. After a moment, she tells him that next time, she'll be the one to make something for him just to return the favor, of course. But when it's finally Miroku's turn to cook, it turns out she's just as bad as her future husband. Watching from the side, Yuta is honestly surprised it's the first time he really notices how similar the two of them are. As strange as this pair may be, they're slowly growing closer, and it's starting to feel like Koichi is winning their little battle. Now that Koichi has begun attending school more regularly, his classmates have started paying more attention to him. One student in particular, a boy named Ken-chan, becomes suspicious. He notices that Koichi has been showing up late and seems a lot happier than usual, so he starts to wonder if Koichi might have a girlfriend. Instead of just asking him like a normal person, Ken-chan decides to follow Koichi after school to catch him in the act. Totally normal behavior, right? His two friends don't really care, but Ken-chan is strangely fixated on him. Surprisingly, Koichi is actually the most popular guy at school. A lot of girls admire him, and he even has his own fan club. His friends point out that it would be way easier and much less creepy if Ken-chan just asked him directly. But instead, the three boys end up sneaking after Koichi into an alley. When they lose sight of him around a corner, they decide to split up to search for him. That's when Koichi suddenly appears right behind Ken-chan and calmly asks what they're doing. Honestly, they weren't being subtle at all. Caught off guard, Ken-chan blurts out the question asking Koichi if he's dating someone. Not exactly what you'd expect after being followed like that. As the boys start arguing among themselves, Koichi simply excuses himself and turns to leave. But before he can even take a few steps, Miroku shows up at the perfect moment. All three boys freeze, staring at the beautiful girl who walks straight up to Koichi and scolds him for keeping her waiting. Koichi quickly apologizes, but the moment gets interrupted when Ken-chan excitedly shouts that he knew it all along, these two are definitely dating. And honestly, he's not wrong. So after all that stalking, was it really worth it just to embarrass himself like this? Apparently, Ken-chan isn't done yet. He suddenly grabs Miroku's hands and starts bombarding her with questions, asking what kind of relationship she has with Koichi and insisting that they must be dating. Miroku quickly becomes uncomfortable as he keeps going, asking one strange question after another about Koichi. At this point, it almost feels like he's the one with a crush on Koichi. Before things get even more awkward, Koichi steps in and gently pulls Miroku out of Ken-chan's reach. He calmly introduces her as Miroku Sano and answers all their questions in a way that strongly suggests they're already married. Then, without a second thought, he just walks away like he didn't just casually tell his classmates that he has a wife. Once they're far enough away, Miroku pinches him for using the wrong name, clearly annoyed that he lied like that. As the two of them walk off, lightly bickering, the clueless boys watching from behind assume she must just be his sister. Honestly, you can't blame them, they're all teenagers, and the idea of one of their classmates being married is pretty hard to believe. Meanwhile, Ken-chan is overjoyed for a completely different reason. Despite everything, he's thrilled that Koichi actually remembered his name, to the point where he almost starts crying. He finally admits that he was the one who created Koichi's fan club, which just makes everything even more suspicious. His friends immediately start teasing him, calling him a stalker. Yeah, this guy definitely has a crush. But as the boys leave, something strange happens. A dark, eerie presence appears from the shadows of the alley, calling out to Miroku and using Koichi's family name. It seems like at least someone out there has realized that the two of them are more than just siblings. The next morning at the Sano house, Miroku stands by a pond, staring at her reflection. She can't help but wonder why she's been failing so badly to scare Koichi. It even makes her question if she's lost her ability to frighten humans at all. As she thinks about trying new ways to scare him, Koichi suddenly sneaks up behind her and startles her. The shock is so strong that she slips and falls straight into the pond, dragging Koichi down with her. At this point, you almost start to wonder if Koichi is the real monster here. After getting completely soaked from falling into the pond, Miroku decides to take a bath. As usual, she starts mumbling to herself, complaining that everything that happened was Koichi's fault. The moment she says his name, Koichi calls out to her from behind the screen door. Annoyed, she snaps at him, telling him to stop sneaking up on her all the time. Still grumpy, Miroku tells him she won't stay in the bath too long, especially since he's the one left standing outside in wet clothes while she gets to relax. Koichi calmly tells her not to rush, saying he doesn't want her to catch a cold. Of course, someone like Miroku can't actually get sick, but even she has to admit that it's kind of sweet that he cares. And honestly, she knows it's partly her fault for pulling him into the pond in the first place. To make up for it, she offers to grant him any request he wants as an apology, which might not have been the best idea. But Miroku is too proud to take it back, insisting she doesn't want to owe him anything. After thinking for a moment, Koichi makes his request a proper date. Not errands, not random outings, but an actual romantic date. He even asks if there's somewhere she'd like to go, and Miroku says she'll think about it. Then she hears Koichi sneeze from the other side of the door and realizes she's been soaking in the bath for way too long. As she quickly gets out, a loud noise suddenly echoes from inside. Hearing it, Koichi rushes in, worried that she slipped and got hurt. But when he enters, the scene is something else. Miroku is sitting on the floor, trying to cover herself while also clutching her face, which is missing its jaw. Completely panicked, she starts searching around for it. Koichi, as calm as ever, simply points out that her jaw is sitting right on top of her head. How it ended up there is anyone's guess. And somehow, even seeing her like that doesn't faze him at all. After she manages to stitch her jaw back in place and Koichi leaves the bathroom, Miroku quickly insists that she only slipped because she was rushing after hearing him sneeze. Koichi thanks Miroku for worrying about him, saying that her concern is one of the things he likes most about her, along with how clumsy she can be. Honestly, it's a good thing she's already his fiancé, because this guy is completely head over heels for her. As usual, Miroku pretends she didn't hear any of that and simply turns away, trying to hide her reaction. But then, a strange and creepy sound echoes behind them. When they turn around, they see a dark, shadowy figure forming, its hands slowly reaching toward Miroku. As the shadow wraps around her, a chilling voice speaks, warning that all secrets and hidden intentions will be brought into the light. The shadow then takes the shape of a young boy, who immediately insults Koichi, calling him nothing more than a lowly insect and telling him to stay away from his older sister. Yes, apparently, urban legends can have siblings too. While Koichi stands there, shocked and unsure how to react, Miroku angrily shouts at the figure, calling him out. It turns out this dramatic intruder is her younger brother, Mikoto. The two haven't seen each other in a long time, and Mikoto explains that during their time apart, he has trained himself to become a more powerful and respected legend. But the reason he's here now is because he found out about her engagement, and he makes it very clear he refuses to let Miroku marry into what he calls a terrible family. That's a pretty harsh judgment for someone who just showed up. And somehow, even though he just met Koichi, Mikoto already dislikes him. Then again, Koichi doesn't seem too fond of him either. Koichi quickly pulls Miroku closer, holding her protectively. When Mikoto tells him to let go of her, Koichi fires back, pointing out that Mikoto is the one who barged into their home uninvited. Things only get worse when Koichi refers to Miroku as his wife. Mikoto clearly doesn't take that well at all. The two start arguing, and in the middle of it, they both grab onto Miroku, pulling so hard it almost looks like they might tear her apart. When Miroku finally yells at them, they let go just in time. At that moment, Yuta steps in, standing protectively beside Miroku with a hand on her shoulder. Seeing this, Mikoto suddenly wraps his arms around his sister in a possessive way, clearly trying to provoke Koichi even more. And of course it works. Meanwhile, Miroku, completely unaware of what her brother is trying to do, attempts to calm things down by properly introducing him. She explains that Mikoto is the legendary, walking corpse with devilish ears, as if that somehow makes the situation any less chaotic. It turns out that Mikoto's ability is all about detecting lies and exposing people for their dishonesty, whatever that really means. As Koichi bluntly puts it, he's basically just a zombie with really sharp hearing. Neither Koichi nor Yuta has ever heard of him before, but that doesn't seem to bother Mikoto. He swallows his pride for a moment and thanks them for taking care of his sister. But that brief moment of politeness doesn't last long. Almost immediately, Mikoto demands that Koichi call off the engagement with Miroku. And honestly, it doesn't seem like it's only about the marriage. He also seems annoyed that Koichi has taken over the younger brother role in her life. It's kind of strange that he thinks Koichi acts more like a sibling than a fiancé. But then again, Mikoto himself is pretty unusual. Even Miroku admits that he's always been a bit odd. Curious, Koichi asks how long they've even been related, since he's never heard of Mikoto before. But Mikoto brushes off the question, saying it's none of his business. The only thing Koichi needs to understand, according to him, is that Mikoto is now the most important man in Miroku's life again. Though honestly, that's a bold claim. Being her future husband should probably count for more than being her younger brother. Before long, the two of them start arguing again, raising their voices and clashing head-on. While they continue their back and forth, Yuta calmly steps aside and offers to make tea for himself and Miroku, as if this chaos is just another normal day. Trying to break the tension, Miroku asks her brother if something is wrong, noticing that he seems more serious than she remembers. That's when Mikoto finally reveals why he came. He asks Miroku to leave with him and return to the House of Legends. He warns her that the Sano family can't be trusted, claiming they are nothing but liars and that she should cut all ties with them. It's a pretty harsh judgment, especially since he barely knows them. But then again, as a legend tied to deceit, maybe he has his reasons. During the time they were apart, Mikoto says he heard an old rumor passed between other legends that humans from the Sano family once tricked beings like them, using contracts to take advantage of their kind. According to the rumor, every legend who married into the Sano family was eventually used for their own benefit. Some of them were treated so badly that they chose to disappear rather than continue living like that. It's a disturbing story, and from the look on her face, it seems like Miroku has heard it before. Still, she shakes her head and says it's just an old tale, insisting that the Sano family today isn't like that anymore. Mikoto is clearly surprised by her response. He narrows his eyes and asks if she's already started falling for her fiancé. Miroku quickly denies it, but Mikoto doesn't back down. He argues that people like the Sano family don't change so easily, and claims that Koichi himself has been lying to her. He tells her to think carefully about their conversations about anything that might have sounded off or made her feel uneasy. In his eyes, Koichi is nothing more than a liar who plans to use her. What makes things worse is that while Mikoto throws out all these accusations, Koichi just stands there silently. He doesn't argue, doesn't defend himself, not even once. That silence makes everything feel even more suspicious. Confused and shaken, Miroku turns to him and asks if it's true. But instead of answering, Koichi simply walks toward the door. Just before leaving, he pauses and quietly says he's sorry. And honestly, that doesn't help his case at all. As Koichi walks away, Makoto shouts after him, hurling insults and taking his silence as proof that the Sano family really is hiding something. But for Miroku, what hurts the most isn't the rumor, it's the thought that Koichi might have been lying when he said he liked her, or when he called her beautiful. That idea affects her more deeply than she expected. Suddenly, a loud noise comes from outside. A moment later, Yuta rushes in, apologizing for the interruption. He explains that Koichi has collapsed and is running a fever, which raises a serious question: how did he suddenly get so sick right after leaving the room? Yuta then reveals the truth. Koichi has always been physically weak, ever since he was a child. He had been trying to hide it while Miroku was around, but the stress from Makoto's accusations must have pushed him too far. Standing beside his bed, looking at his pale and fragile state, Miroku starts to wonder, has he been hiding this the whole time? Were all those strange actions and sudden, emotional words his way of covering up how unwell he really is? Even with all her doubts, Miroku still cares about Koichi enough to stay by his side and look after him while he's sick. She sits quietly near his bed, watching over him. When Koichi finally begins to wake up, Yuta politely steps out of the room to give them some space. As Koichi regains his senses, he looks embarrassed, clearly uncomfortable that Miroku has seen what he considers his weak and pathetic side. But to Miroku, it's nothing like that. She's only worried about his health. He asks about her brother, and Miroku tells him that Makoto has agreed to leave for now, at least until Koichi recovers. Well, at least he's not completely unreasonable. Koichi then apologizes, saying that because of his condition, they probably won't be able to go on their date the next day. But his apology doesn't stop there. He also says sorry for everything that happened earlier and admits that the rumors Makoto mentioned about the Sano family are mostly true. The family may act normal on the surface, but Koichi knows that in the past, they did deceive and take advantage of legends. He explains that while he can't escape his family's history, his feelings for Miroku are real. That part, he insists, has never been a lie. He tries to ease her worries, telling her that the current Sano family is different from those in the past. They would never intentionally trick a legend now. Still, Miroku can't help but question one thing: if everything is fine, then why did he suddenly walk out earlier while saying sorry? From her perspective, it made things seem much worse, like their entire relationship might have been fake. Realizing how it must have looked, Koichi feels a bit foolish. His dramatic reaction definitely made the situation more serious than it actually was. Poor Miroku had even started to think she was stuck in a fake engagement. Then Koichi admits there was one thing he lied about. It was when he said he hadn't even thought about touching her before marriage. And yeah, that's where things start to get a little awkward. It seems Koichi has only just fully realized that he's living under the same roof as the girl he loves. And with that realization came feelings and desires he's been trying hard to control. So if Makoto sensed any dishonesty from him, it probably wasn't about anything serious, just Koichi struggling to hold back those thoughts. Looks like even the calm and composed Koichi has finally lost to his teenage hormones. It was bound to happen sooner or later. Miroku panics again when he gets close, but this time, when he leans in to kiss her, she doesn't pull away. For a moment, it feels like they're about to share their first kiss. But then, right at that exact moment, Koichi suddenly collapses onto her shoulder. I mean, sure, he has a fever, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Thankfully, Koichi recovers pretty quickly, and once he's back on his feet, he returns with even more determination. At the same time, Makoto also isn't backing down. For some reason, the two of them decide the best way to settle things is a badminton match. Because obviously, that's how serious rivals handle their problems. With Yuta acting as the referee and Seiya watching calmly from the side, the two boys prepare to compete for Miroku. It was actually Makoto's idea. He declares that whoever wins the match gets to keep his sister. It's a pretty old-fashioned way of thinking, assuming Miroku would just go along with the result of a simple game. Even Koichi probably realizes that. But when Makoto raises the stakes, he can't refuse. The deal is intense. If Makoto wins, the engagement is cancelled on the spot. But if Koichi wins, he can ask for anything he wants, even something as extreme as Makoto's life. Excited by the possibilities, Koichi says he'll decide his reward later, and just like that, the match begins. The rules are simple: miss the shuttlecock, lose a point. Whoever has the higher score at the end wins. But during the first round, neither of them misses a single shot for a full 30 minutes. It gets so ridiculous that Yuta even wonders if they secretly practiced beforehand. For the second round, they add a time limit, probably to make things less endless. Watching them go back and forth non-stop must be exhausting for everyone else. While sitting on the sidelines, Seiya asks Miroku who she's rooting for, Koichi or her brother. Without hesitation, Miroku says she's cheering for Makoto, since she wants the engagement to end just as much as he does. Besides, she doesn't want to lose her connection with her family again. And the funny part? She says all of this loud enough for Koichi to hear. She says it loud enough that Koichi hears every word, and it throws him off just enough to miss the next shot. The shuttlecock drops, and just like that, he loses a point. Now he's behind. And somehow, that also means Miroku gets to punish him by drawing on his face. Taking full advantage of the moment, she paints small X marks on his cheeks to match the stitches on her own face, then proudly shows him off as the slit-mouth boy, clearly enjoying teasing him. Meanwhile, Makoto watches in silence, looking more and more irritated. The match continues, and the tension only grows. Both of them keep pushing hard, but because of the time limit, the score ends up tied going into the final round. This last match will decide everything. But instead of getting serious, Makoto suddenly lowers his racket and admits defeat. He says that, deep down, he already feels like he's lost. He confesses that he believed Koichi couldn't make Miroku happy, that's what he kept telling himself. But after watching them during the match, seeing her smile and laugh so naturally, he realizes he was wrong. Still, he reacts in his usual dramatic way, throwing a bit of a tantrum and telling Koichi to go ahead and claim whatever reward he wants. But Koichi has been watching too, not just the game, but Miroku and her brother. Seeing how they interact has left a strong impression on him. So instead of asking for something extreme, Koichi makes a simple request. The next time Makoto visits, he should use the front door. That's all. Makoto is caught off guard. He asks if Koichi is really sure, reminding him that he still plans to interfere and won't give up on stopping their marriage. Koichi just shrugs and says that's fine. No matter what Makoto does, he's determined to make him accept him as family. After all, marriage isn't just between two people, it involves their families too. And Koichi says he wouldn't want it any other way. Hearing that, Makoto feels a bit embarrassed by how childish he's been acting. He finally apologizes for causing so much trouble and agrees to leave. But before going, he quickly leans in and gives Miroku a kiss on the cheek, then runs off before Koichi can react and knock him out. Something tells me this isn't the last time we'll see Makoto, and Koichi seems to feel the same way. But even after her brother leaves, Miroku looks unexpectedly happy. Maybe, deep down, all she really wanted was for the two of them to get along, so she wouldn't have to choose between them or worry about losing her family again. But that peaceful moment doesn't last long. Much sooner than anyone expected, Makoto shows up again, this time as a transfer student in Koichi's class. And just like that, it's clear that more chaos is on the way. Now the real question is, who will Miroku choose to stand with? Will this strange engagement fall apart like she originally wanted? Or is she already starting to fall for Koichi without even realizing it? After being reunited with his sister for the first time in years, Makoto is shocked to see how much Miroku has changed. The terrifying legend she once was is nowhere to be seen. Now, she's more like an ordinary girl, someone who blushes just because her fiancé calls her pretty. Times really have changed. But instead of feeling happy about it, Miroku takes that as an insult. To her, it feels like proof that she's losing what made her special, that she's no longer scary and is only valued for her looks. And honestly, things haven't been going in her favor. In every competition between Koichi and Makoto, Koichi has come out on top. Watching all this, Makoto can see his sister slowly losing confidence in herself and her identity as a legend. That's why he's more determined than ever to fight for her. He angrily calls out Koichi, criticizing him for not being afraid of Miroku at all. At the same time, though, he admits that her attempts to scare him have been pretty weak, which doesn't exactly help her confidence. Seeing this, Yuta steps in and offers some advice. He explains that scaring someone like Koichi won't work with simple tricks or sudden surprises. Instead, she needs to find something that truly gets to him, something personal. Miroku likes this idea and decides to ask Koichi directly what he's afraid of. But Koichi doesn't answer. Instead, he turns the question back on her. After hesitating for a moment, Miroku admits that she's afraid of dogs. And somehow, after saying that, she starts to think Koichi reminds her of one. The resemblance becomes even funnier when Koichi playfully barks at her, and surprisingly, it actually scares her a little. As the two of them mess around, Yuta quietly asks Makoto if he's planning to give up. But Makoto immediately refuses. He believes Miroku will eventually find a way to scare Koichi, reclaim her confidence, and regain her place as a legend no matter what it takes. Before long, the day of their first real date finally arrives. Miroku feels nervous about it, so she decides to call up a well-known friend named Mary to ask for some fashion advice. But Mary isn't very helpful at all. Instead of giving advice, she reminds Miroku that she used to be the queen of urban legends. According to her, someone like Miroku shouldn't be stressing over what to wear on a human date. It sounds more like criticism than support, but Miroku chooses to take it as encouragement. She decides to stay true to herself and wear what she normally does. Well, that's one way to look at it. Now her thoughts shift to Koichi. What is he going to wear? Considering he's been wearing the same black turtleneck ever since she met him, it's pretty safe to assume he won't suddenly show up in anything fancy. Still, just to be sure, Miroku sneaks into his room to check out his wardrobe. And what does she find? A whole closet full of identical black turtlenecks, exactly as expected. Most people would have quietly left at that point. But not Miroku. By the time Koichi gets back from school, he finds her stuck inside one of his sweaters, struggling and yelling from within it. When he asks what she's doing, Miroku awkwardly explains that she was worried he might be thinner than her, especially since she's been eating a lot of candy lately. Honestly, can urban legends even gain weight? Who knows? This would have been the perfect moment for Koichi to comfort her and say she's fine the way she is. But instead, he's too amused by the situation. Watching her stuck in his sweater makes him laugh, and he admits he actually finds this side of her kind of cute. Cute enough that he leans in closer, hovering right in front of her. But of course, this is Koichi. Instead of going any further, he holds himself back and simply gives her a gentle kiss on the forehead. Not exactly surprising. At this rate, it might take these two forever to reach their first real kiss. The next day, during their date, Miroku is so embarrassed by what happened that she can't even look at him. And because of her reaction, Koichi starts getting nervous too, worrying that maybe she's upset with him. Yeah, this date is already off to a pretty awkward start. Thankfully, the theme park ends up being a great way to break the awkward tension between them. Miroku has never ridden a roller coaster before, and to her surprise, she actually loves it. But what really catches her interest is the haunted house attraction. When they see a bunch of people coming out looking completely shaken and scared, Miroku gets even more excited to try it for herself. Inside, the haunted house turns out to be more like a standing theater with a horror show playing out. It's easy to get distracted in there, especially by one girl wearing bunny ears who keeps trying to take pictures of the screen. In this kind of setting, Miroku starts to feel more like herself again. Confident, she walks up to the girl, slightly opens the stitches on her mouth, and calmly tells her to stop disturbing everyone else. The result is instant. The girl freezes in fear, drops her phone, and quickly obeys, probably traumatized for life. So yeah, Miroku clearly hasn't lost her ability to scare people after all. Honestly, if the whole urban legend thing ever stops working out, she could probably do great as a strict movie theater attendant. A little while later, the other visitors are running out of the attraction screaming and crying, while Koichi and Miroku walk out completely unfazed. As the awkwardness between them slowly fades, time passes quickly, and soon it's time for lunch. The moment candy and sweets are mentioned, Miroku lights up with excitement, so Koichi heads off to buy some. While she waits, Miroku notices a familiar face, Ken-chan, the overly obsessed classmate from Koichi's school. His usual friends, Saruda and Kijiyama, are there too, talking with Koichi while standing in line. Ken-chan nervously apologizes to Miroku for how he acted before, when he kept asking her non-stop questions about her relationship. Miroku tells him not to worry about it and casually invites him to come sit next to her instead of shouting from far away like a complete weirdo. Honestly, every time this kid shows up, he somehow manages to get even stranger. Ken-chan excitedly tells Miroku that he met her brother, Mikoto, at school, and that Mikoto finally explained the truth about her relationship with Koichi. But that only leads to more questions. Confused, Ken-chan asks why Koichi introduced her with the last name Sano when they first met. Caught off guard, Miroku hesitates before reluctantly admitting that they're actually engaged. And of course, she says this at the worst possible moment, right as Koichi and the others walk up behind them. Hearing her finally say it out loud touches Koichi, since she's never openly acknowledged their engagement before. Realizing what she just said, Miroku immediately tries to take it back, flustered and embarrassed. But Koichi gently takes her hand and places a soft kiss on her palm, instantly shutting her up. Meanwhile, in the background of this very personal moment, the three boys just stand there awkwardly, holding their food and watching everything unfold. Thankfully, Ken-chan's friends have enough sense to pull him away before he makes things even more uncomfortable, leaving Koichi and Miroku alone to enjoy their meal. Koichi hands Miroku a whole bag filled with candy and donuts, but she gets even more excited when he reveals a single lollipop. He makes a big deal out of it, saying it was the last one in the shop and that he got it just for her. He's clearly trying hard, even teasing her a bit by saying it was all worth it just to hear her admit their engagement in front of others. Blushing, Miroku can't argue back this time. With her mouth full of sweets, she awkwardly admits that she had fun and thanks him for the day. After such a successful first date, Miraku decides it's time to visit some of her fellow urban legend friends. And where do a group of legends meet up? Exactly where you'd expect, in a quiet, abandoned lakeside near old railway tracks, surrounded by shadows and ruins. The friends she meets there include Viola, a bold and curious white-haired woman who is very eager to hear all the juicy details about the date, and Mary, a doll-like girl known as the girl on the phone who takes things much more seriously. Miraku quickly shuts down their teasing, saying that nothing special really happened on the date, they just walked around and ate some food together. But Mary doesn't buy it for a second. She tells Miraku to be honest with herself, pointing out that they've already been living together, going on dates, and even sleeping in the same bed. That's not something you do with someone you don't care about. Viola agrees and goes even further, telling Miraku she should just accept the marriage already. When Miraku pushes back, Viola suddenly throws out a shocking question: if Miraku doesn't want him, then can she marry Koichi instead? That instantly catches Miraku off guard. Mary quickly tells Viola to stop joking around, but the point has already been made. Even if Viola was kidding, Miraku's reaction says everything. The idea of someone else marrying Koichi clearly bothers her, whether she wants to admit it or not. To make up for teasing her, Viola offers to teach Miraku a new way to scare Koichi, something that doesn't rely on her usual slit-mouth trick. Taking that advice, Miraku tries it out as soon as she gets home. She sneaks up behind Koichi and whispers softly into his ear, hoping it will finally frighten him. But it doesn't go the way she expected. Instead of being scary, the whole thing just turns awkward. Realizing it didn't work, Miraku gets embarrassed and storms off, yelling at Koichi to forget what just happened. Meanwhile, Koichi is left standing there, completely flustered. He keeps touching the spot where she whispered, his face red and his body tense for the rest of the day. It turns out Viola's scary technique had a much bigger effect than Miraku realized, just not in the way she intended. The next day, Miraku decides to return the favor from before by cooking something for Koichi. This time, she asks Yuta for help as she tries to make rice dumplings. And surprisingly, she's doing a better job than Koichi did, though. To be fair, that's not exactly a high standard. The last time Koichi stepped into the kitchen, he left behind a disaster that looked like something out of a horror movie. So even though Yuta ends up doing most of the actual cooking again, he still finds it sweet that Miraku is trying to return the favor. When he casually asks if this means she's given up on trying to scare Koichi, Miraku quickly denies it, saying she's just taking a short break. After all, Koichi has exams coming up, and she doesn't want to distract him while he's studying. Not that her attempts to scare him have worked much anyway. Once they finish cooking, Miraku thanks Yuta for helping her and even compliments him, saying he's like a perfect housekeeper. Yuta smiles but corrects her, explaining that he's not actually a housekeeper. He originally came to the Sano household as Koichi's bodyguard, but after Koichi's health got worse, he slowly started taking on more responsibilities around the house to support him. He admits he wasn't very good at it in the beginning, and that it was actually his wife who taught him how to cook. Wait, his wife? Miraku is just as shocked. Yuta doesn't look much older than a teenager, yet he casually reveals he's married. When he shows her his ring, Miraku is so stunned that she immediately runs off, bursting into Koichi's room and loudly asking if he knew about this. Of course, Koichi already knew, but he refuses to answer her endless questions about Yuta's mysterious wife, simply telling her to ask Yuta directly. That's when Koichi notices the rice dumplings in her hand. Miraku explains that she made them for him to eat while studying. Though, from the looks of it, Koichi has already given up on studying for now and is busy cleaning instead. As he organizes the books on his shelf, Miraku notices a bit of dust on his hair and instinctively reaches out to brush it away. For a moment, she gets distracted by how his hair feels between her fingers. Then she suddenly realizes what she's doing. Embarrassed, she quickly pulls her hand back, apologizes, and hurries out of the room, saying she'll go make some tea to go with the dumplings. Miraku doesn't even realize it, but as she walks away, Koichi is left completely flustered behind her. Just the feeling of her fingers in his hair is enough to leave him shaken. At this point, he's fully fallen for her, no doubt about it. Because of that moment, Koichi ends up having a strange dream the next morning. In it, a giant fish-headed figure stands between two versions of Miraku, one with her mouth stitched shut and the other with it wide open. The creature asks him which one has feelings for him, and without hesitation, Koichi answers, both. Suddenly, one Miraku grabs him from behind while the other moves closer, leaning in so near that his heart starts racing. Just as things are about to go further, he wakes up. At the same time, Seiya comes in to wake him up for the day. Still a bit shaken by the dream, Koichi stops by Miroku's room before heading to school. As he stands outside, he overhears her talking to herself. It sounds like she's regained some control over her powers. For the first time in a while, she's able to open and close her slit mouth without using thread. Even though she can't maintain it for long, she's clearly excited about the progress. She even says out loud that she can't let Koichi find out about it. Unfortunately for her, he's already standing right there, listening. Later at school, Koichi struggles to focus during his exams. His thoughts are completely filled with Miroku, making it impossible for him to concentrate. Without realizing it, she's slowly making him fall deeper and deeper in love with her. At this point, he even starts wondering if she's doing it on purpose. He's so distracted that he doesn't even notice when the test ends or when Makoto walks up to him. Seeing how out of it he is, Makoto asks if something's wrong. Koichi admits that he used to understand Miroku easily, like reading an open book. But now, he can't figure her out at all, and it's starting to confuse him. Makoto, clearly not great with this kind of emotional situation, decides the best solution is to just call his sister directly. Before Koichi can stop him, the phone is already ringing, and Miroku picks up. The clumsy Miroku tells Koichi over the phone that she fell into the pond again, and hearing that makes him laugh so much that all his tension fades away. He tells her that he likes her, and even though he said it before, she reacts the same way as always, getting flustered and embarrassed. Somehow, that familiar reaction makes Koichi feel calm again, like everything is back to normal. Feeling refreshed after the call, Koichi heads off, but Makoto starts to follow him only to be stopped right outside the classroom. Waiting there are Koichi's biggest fans, Ken-chan, along with Saruda and Kijama. They immediately start asking Makoto what he was talking about with Koichi and whether they're close. Makoto doesn't give a clear answer, but he casually mentions that they've played games together, like badminton and board games. Of course, he leaves out the part where they're actually rivals fighting over Miroku. The boys are so jealous that they don't even question it. Instead, they excitedly invite Makoto to hang out and play games with them sometime before heading off. Left alone in the hallway, Makoto goes to grab his things from his locker. But something feels off. Suddenly, Koichi appears and says he wants to walk home together. That alone is suspicious enough. Makoto knows very well that the two of them are not on friendly terms, so this behavior doesn't make sense. Right away, he realizes this isn't the real Koichi. He confronts the imposter, asking what it thinks it's doing. The fake Koichi calmly responds, saying Makoto should be asking himself the same thing. After all, this mysterious figure was the one who told him the truth about the Sano family's dark past. Yet Makoto is still sticking around and even spending time with Koichi. Mocking him, the fake Koichi points out that Makoto, dressed in a school uniform, looks more like a human than a legend. Then, without warning, it suddenly attacks, lunging at him with a knife. The next day at school, Koichi's class is preparing for their final exam of the semester. But one seat is noticeably empty. It doesn't take long for Koichi to find out why. His phone rings from an unknown number, and when he answers, it's Makoto calling from Mary's phone. Makoto urgently warns Koichi over the phone, telling him to go home immediately. Miroku is in danger. Back at the house, Miroku has already noticed something strange. There's someone standing near the front gate, someone who looks exactly like Koichi. She doesn't know about the doppelganger, but something feels off, especially since he isn't wearing his school uniform. Trusting her instincts, Miroku walks straight up to him and suddenly slaps him across the face. For a split second, the disguise cracks. The spot she hit begins to sting, and one sharp, glowing eye appears before quickly fading back into Koichi's normal face. Even so, the stranger calmly claims he has no intention of hurting her. Instead, he says he wants to free her from the marriage contract. Then he starts revealing the truth about the Sano family, at least, his version of it. He explains that just a couple of generations ago, the head of the Sano household tricked many legends into marrying them. Those who tried to resist or break their contracts were locked away, and some of them never escaped. According to him, Koichi is no different. He carries the same blood, so he must be just like his ancestors. But Miroku doesn't fall for it. She cuts him off, saying he talks too much and that she trusts Koichi more than anything he says. That response clearly angers the imposter. Without warning, he pulls out a knife and lunges straight at her. Just as the blade is about to reach her, something suddenly strikes him from the side, knocking the weapon out of his hand. Koichi arrives just in time. Standing between Miroku and the attacker, he calmly tells the fake to leave. And surprisingly, it actually listens. The doppelganger disappears without another word. Miroku looks uneasy, wondering if it was really okay to just let him go. But Koichi doesn't care about that right now. All that matters to him is that she's safe. Seeing how worried he was, Miroku gently reassures him. She tells him she's completely fine, that she wasn't hurt at all, and everything is okay. Meanwhile, Seiya, the slightly questionable maid, just stands there watching everything from behind the gate, not even bothering to step in. Really helpful, Grandma. Once everyone is safely back inside, she calmly explains that what the doppelganger said earlier was only part of the truth. There's a much deeper story behind it all. But while they're inside, unaware, the danger hasn't gone away. The doppelganger has returned, and this time, he manages to open the gate. Feeling proud of himself, he doesn't notice someone quietly appearing behind him. When he turns around, he locks eyes with Yuta, and instantly realizes that Yuta is far more than just a simple bodyguard. That's when the truth comes out. Yuta is actually a legend himself, once known as Karasuhibei the Black Serpent, a being said to turn people into stone with just a single glance. It becomes clear that Koichi and Miroku are caught in something much bigger than they expected. Between the doppelganger and the hidden identities around them, things are only getting more dangerous. Inside the house, completely unaware of what's happening outside, Koichi and Miroku continue listening to Seiya. She begins telling her own story about the Sano family's past. Back in the 20th century, the Sano were at the peak of their power, forming contracts and marrying as many legends as they could. But then, something strange started happening. The brides-to-be began disappearing. Among the maids, rumors began to spread. They believed that a legend called the Black Serpent was behind it all, especially since he was living with the Sano family at the time and was known to hold a deep grudge against them. This Black Serpent, Karasuhibei, had a soft spot for one particular girl, the daughter of the clan leader. Even though she wasn't related by blood, the Sano family had taken her in. She was the only person who ever treated him with kindness. Alongside her was the young master, Kaoru, the clan leader's nephew, who was also part of this complicated story. Unlike his uncle, Kaoru didn't share the same cold attitude toward the Black Serpent. He often stayed close to both the serpent and the young woman. It was obvious to him that the Black Serpent had feelings for her. So, like any good friend, Kaoru encouraged him to be honest and confess. But the serpent refused. Because of his complicated connection to the Sano family, he believed getting involved with her would only lead to trouble. There was a deeper reason for this. Kaoru, who was set to become the next head of the family, had originally been arranged to marry the Black Serpent. But that plan quickly fell apart when they realized the serpent was actually male. Even though the engagement was cancelled, the Black Serpent stayed in the household, not exactly as a guest, but not entirely free either. In exchange for being released from his contract, he was forced to obey the clan leader's orders. One of those duties was especially cruel. He had to turn disobedient brides into stone. The serpent hated doing this. He had no desire to harm other legends. But he also knew that if he refused, the girl he cared about would be put in danger. So, to protect her, he carried out those orders, using the snakes around his neck to petrify the victims. Kaoru, however, was different from the rest of his family. He pitied the serpent and understood how painful it was for him to be tied to such a cruel household. Wanting to help, he secretly came up with a plan to set him free. When everything was ready, the Black Serpent found himself at a turning point. For so long, he had tried to suppress his feelings, convincing himself that a human and a legend could never be together. But when the moment finally came, he couldn't hold back anymore. He confessed to the young woman and asked if she would be willing to die with him. Not exactly the smoothest confession, but in his world, maybe that was the only way he knew how to express his love. While the two of them were making this desperate promise, Kaoru was carrying out the final step of his plan. He led his uncle to a hidden shed where all the petrified legends were kept. But when the clan leader looked inside, he was shocked. Every single one of them was no longer stone. They were alive again. When the clan leader demanded to know how this was even possible, Kaoru showed him a box filled with the severed snakes from the Black Serpent's back. He used it as proof, claiming the serpent had taken his own life, and in doing so, released all the legends he had turned into stone. Of course, those legends had suffered for years. Being trapped and mistreated for so long left them full of anger. One by one, they surrounded the clan leader, ready to take their revenge. As this unfolded, Kaoru made a promise to rebuild the Sano family from scratch and restore its honor. Surprisingly, his uncle didn't react with anger. Even after realizing his own nephew had planned all of this, he simply accepted his fate. Instead of fighting back, he wished Kaoru luck and allowed himself to be taken by the very legends he had once controlled. Meanwhile, the truth was very different from what it seemed. The Black Serpent and the young woman weren't dead at all. They had escaped together. The serpent had kept one secret hidden all along. He could reverse the petrification whenever he wanted. So when Kaoru offered to help him, they came up with a plan. They faked their deaths, cut off his snakes to sell the lie, and left Kaoru behind while they disappeared without a trace. When the serpent tried to explain everything to the young woman, she broke down in tears. Anyone would react that way after being taken from their home and forced to fake their own death. Feeling guilty, the serpent wished he could stop time so they could stay together like this forever. But she gently refused that idea. She didn't want time to freeze, she wanted to live through every season, every moment, as long as he was by her side. Hearing that, the serpent finally let go of all his doubts. He pulled her into an embrace and confessed his love. And she answered him with the same feelings, promising that she would stay with him and never let go of his hand, even as she grew older. And in the end, that's exactly what happened. Back in the present, the truth finally comes out: the black serpent was actually Yuta all along. And the woman from the story, that was Seiya, his wife, who still looks just as beautiful as ever. Yeah, definitely not something anyone saw coming. Especially not Miroku. After hearing everything, Miroku gets so embarrassed that she literally tries to hide inside a giant pot. She had no idea Yuta was a legend, let alone that he was married to their maid. Meanwhile, Koichi already knew the whole time. Another flashback reveals why. When Kaoru grew old, he asked Yuta to take care of his grandson, Koichi, after he was gone. During his lifetime, Kaoru worked hard to fix the Sano family's reputation and make up for their past. And honestly, things might have improved if it weren't for the doppelganger causing trouble, spreading rumors, and pretending to be Koichi. Speaking of that doppelganger, while everyone was busy talking, Yuta had already dealt with him. He turned him into stone in seconds and left him like that overnight. As the others start discussing what to do next, Mikoto suddenly crashes in, well, not exactly his whole body, just his head. It turns out that when the doppelganger attacked him earlier at school, it tore apart all the stitches holding his body together. So Mikoto has been struggling to reassemble himself ever since, rushing over as fast as he could. But when his flying head smacks into the petrified figure, the impact cracks the stone, breaking the spell. The doppelganger reverts back to his true form, a young boy. Still stuck as just a head, Mikoto explains that this boy used to be his friend. But everything changed when the kid threatened Miroku with a knife. He also reveals that this same boy was the one spreading all those rumors about the Sano family. And the reason behind all of it? The boy was terrified. He believed the Sano family would take Mikoto away and harm his sister. So he acted out of fear, even if it meant going too far. Mikoto turns to Koichi and asks if he can take the boy back to the world of legends to face punishment. Koichi agrees without hesitation. But before letting him go, he steps in close and gives the kid a serious warning: never come near his house or Miroku again. Honestly, that's pretty fair. Even if the boy is young, he still threatened her life. In the realm of legends, a council gathers to decide what to do with him. The group includes Viola, Mikoto, Yuta, and Mary. After some discussion, they come to a decision that's surprisingly lenient. Instead of something harsh, they decide the boy should become Mary's apprentice. This would mean changing his nature and powers, but it would also set him up as her future successor. Honestly, it sounds more like an opportunity than a punishment, but the boy clearly doesn't see it that way. Still, he doesn't have much of a choice. Reluctantly, he accepts and introduces himself as Satoru, while Mary agrees to take him under her wing. Back in the human world, Mikoto tells Koichi everything that happened and wonders if it's really possible for a legend to change their own story. Koichi believes it is. After all, legends aren't fixed, they evolve over time. Even Miroku used to be far more terrifying and extreme than she is now. Though, it's a bit hard to picture that when Koichi gets home and finds Miroku has accidentally given herself a short bob haircut. It's not a big deal since her hair will grow back by morning, but still, she hasn't touched scissors since the days when it was part of her original legend. Feeling unsure, Miroku asks Koichi if he prefers her with long hair or short hair. And of course, he uses the moment perfectly. He steps closer and gently tells her that he'll always love her hair, no matter how it looks. Smooth as ever. That said, he does admit he prefers it long. Mainly because right now, she looks a little too much like her brother, which is, understandably, a bit unsettling. Miroku feels a little disappointed by Koichi's answer. She was expecting something more dramatic, like a bad memory involving a short-haired girl that made him hate that hairstyle. But nope, it's just because she looks like her brother. Still, in a strange way, her thoughts end up being pretty spot on. At school, Koichi's so-called fan club Ken-chan and his friends are roaming the halls when they run into a short-haired upperclassman. She hands them a letter with a big heart on it and asks them to give it to Koichi. Yeah, that definitely feels like trouble. And somehow, that letter ends up in Miroku's hands. Of course it does. She already knows Koichi is popular, so she isn't shocked that someone might have feelings for him. But things take a turn when she overhears Koichi talking on the phone with someone named Mao, agreeing to meet up. Suddenly, she remembers the name written on the letter Mayuri and panic starts to set in. Her thoughts spiral quickly, and she begins to worry that Koichi might be cheating on her. So, like any totally rational person, she puts on a ridiculous disguise and decides to follow him. Part of her hopes it's all a misunderstanding, that maybe the Mao from the phone and the Mayuri from the letter are different people, or maybe even just a guy friend. But then she sees her. A cute short-haired girl shows up, and just like that, Miroku's worst fears feel confirmed. The girl acts very close to Koichi, holding onto his arm and dragging him from shop to shop. From the outside, it looks exactly like a date. Then things get worse. As Mao turns a corner, she suddenly bumps into Miroku, causing her to spill her drink everywhere. But instead of brushing it off, Mao immediately recognizes her even with a disguise. She says Koichi has talked about her so much that she'd recognize her anywhere. And then comes the twist. Mao introduces herself properly as Manamike, Koichi's cousin. Yeah. False alarm. Miroku is left completely confused. Trying to process everything, she pulls out the love letter and asks if it belongs to Mao. It does, but not in the way she thought. The letter was actually meant for Miroku, not Koichi. At that point, Miroku looks like her brain has completely stopped working. And right on cue, Koichi shows up to clear everything up. It turns out there was nothing suspicious going on at all. Mao is actually getting married, and the letter wasn't a confession, it was an invitation to her wedding. She only met up with Koichi so he could help her choose a gift for her future husband. Hearing this, Miroku feels relieved and even a little touched that she was invited. After Mao runs off, Miroku gets excited at the thought of getting to know her better. Koichi, on the other hand, finds the whole situation pretty funny. Especially Miroku's disguise, which barely covered anything except her mouth. As usual, he had figured out what she was doing from the very beginning, he just decided to play along and tease her a bit. Still embarrassed, Miroku scolds him, saying that next time he should tell her if he plans to meet another girl. She even adds that he's only allowed to like her. So yeah, turns out Miroku gets jealous pretty easily. And honestly, Koichi seems to enjoy that. In fact, he enjoys it enough to lean in and try to kiss her right over her face mask. The result is, not exactly romantic. When he pulls back, his face is bright red from embarrassment. Well, you can't win every time. Soon, the day of Mao's wedding arrives. The moment Miroku sees her, she bursts into tears. Mao rushes over, and Miroku immediately tells her how beautiful she looks, thanking her for the invitation and wishing her a happy life. It's clear she really loves weddings, though you'd think that would make her more excited about her own. Before heading off to greet other guests, Mao hands Miroku a flower instead of throwing a bouquet. It's a pretty obvious hint that Miroku might be next in line to get married. As Miroku processes all of this, a tearful man suddenly approaches them. At first, he seems overly emotional, but the moment he recognizes Miroku, his mood instantly brightens. Surprisingly, this isn't Mao's father, it's Koichi's. Miroku is shocked to finally meet her future father-in-law. He quickly apologizes for not introducing himself sooner and then calls over his wife. Mamaji Sono, the current head of the family, definitely acts like she's in charge. When her husband starts making a scene, she immediately punches him in the stomach and tells him to be quiet. It's pretty clear where Koichi gets his personality from. Miroku feels nervous meeting his parents for the first time, but Mamaji seems surprisingly interested in her. She warmly suggests that they all spend more time together, preferably at their own home, which they rarely visit. But once they arrive at the Sano house, things take a strange turn. Koichi's parents suddenly act completely different. They start doting on Miroku, poking her cheeks and sweetly asking when she's going to officially become part of the family. It turns out there's a reason for this sudden personality change. Mamaji and her husband accidentally ate chocolates filled with alcohol. And let's just say, Mamaji cannot handle her liquor at all. At least in this state, she's a lot less intimidating. And now that she's more relaxed and talkative, she begins sharing stories about Koichi's childhood. She explains that while she took over Kaoru's work of rebuilding the family's reputation and running the business, Koichi ended up spending most of his time with Yuta and Seiya instead of his parents. Clearly embarrassed, Koichi cuts her off and quickly leads Miroku outside. Miroku comments that his parents are very different from what she expected, and Koichi apologizes for their behavior, blaming it on the alcohol. As they talk, Koichi confirms what his mother said. He did spend a lot of time alone growing up, but he never really felt lonely. His parents were always there when it mattered, and when they weren't, Yuta and Seiya were by his side. Because of that, he feels grateful for the family he had. But even so, there's still something missing, something he wants now. When Koichi admits that what he wants is her, Miroku quickly tells him to stop acting so entitled. And yeah, he might sound a bit bold, But honestly, he's not entirely wrong either.